Hey team, it's time for that staff video update. This week we're talking about the staff survey results. You can find a PDF in the exec summary with a summary of all the results, but I do have a couple of highlights for you. So number one, our energy reserve. Last year we had the same question, this year we had the same question, and we improved as a staff overall by over a point. So last year we were 5.6 on your overall energy reserve rating. This year we were at 6.7. So I was asked the question, hey, what's the ideal rating? Where do you think is a good space for us to be? And I think it's right in that 6 to 7 range. That means that we're working on the right things, but we're not too overwhelmed, and we have the bandwidth to potentially move new projects forward. So if you're sitting at 6 or 7, like most of the organization, great. If you're sitting at a 9 or a 10, where you have the capacity to take on more, have a conversation with your supervisor. If you're sitting lower than a 6 or 7, that even 4 or 5, a couple people were at 2 and 3, I think there's a couple evaluation questions that you can ask yourself. You can look at the current season you're in at work. You can see what's on your plate, maybe things like camp or the Finley build out that are causing some extra stress or a lower energy reserve, but those things are going to resolve themselves once the project is complete. You can also look at maybe a season that you're in personally and what you're going through personally that may be detracting from your overall energy reserve. And maybe it actually has nothing to do with your current workload. So depending on where you're at, I think a couple more questions like that could be helpful as you continue to process. Some of our highest rated categories were great for us. Living out our mission, number 1, our highest rated category, great stuff. For our supervisors, this is pretty sweet. Our supervisors, our staff as an overall said their supervisors care. They rated them high on appreciating good performance, and they also rated them high on being approachable. So I love that. I love our staff culture when we can talk about those things and people are being led well. Also, people rated high that their responsibilities are aligned with their gifts. Super passionate about that. That's a big focal point of living out our purpose as a church. Some of our lower rated categories, productive meetings. We're going to evaluate that. We have some work to do there where we can make meetings more productive, maybe have less meetings, not necessarily sure, but we're going to dig in. Also, overall satisfaction with compensation. It's your overall compensation package. There is going to be a tension in this just because you do work for a nonprofit, you work for a church, but the truth is we see this pretty clearly where we're at. We participate or have access to the information from the Mega Church Compensation Survey. So this is large churches all across America, and right now we are right at, as a staff, the 50th percentile. What that means is 50% of larger churches pay more than us and 50% of larger churches pay less than us. So we want to try and increase that through raises, but we also know that right now in an inflationary period overall that people's resources are getting tighter and tighter. So we want to keep an eye on that as a staff, but the truth is we're not going to be able to compete with the marketplace. If you look at your role and you have a role that would have a common comparison in the marketplace, the church is just not going to be able to keep up as far as what the marketplace is paying. We're aware of that. We're doing as best as we can, but it is a tension to navigate continuously as we move forward. Speaking of tensions to navigate, a couple things that several of you said you would change about our staff culture. One is the tension or the disconnect between central and campuses. The truth is, this is always going to be this way at some level. If you look at other organizations, even other organizations that I've worked in, I worked in a manufacturing plant. There's a disconnect between the plant and the offices. If you work for a sales team, there's a disconnect sometimes between the sales manager and the sales force. So it is going to be a tension to manage, as central is responsible for the strategy and structure, and campuses are responsible for the relationships and the execution. Whose responsibility is it to close that gap? It's ours, all of us together. So if campuses have an issue or concern about the strategy and structure, they need to have a conversation with their central counterpart or their supervisor in order to have that conversation. And if central has an issue with the execution and the relationships at the campus level, we need to step in and have those conversations. And before we have those conversations, we need to believe the best, and we need to fill any of those gaps we have with trust. That's going to help move our mission forward. That's going to help move our staff culture forward. Also, feedback. We live in a very feedback intensive, a very feedback rich culture, and it takes some maturity to operate in a culture like this. Potentially what you could feel is, I provide feedback all the time and no one listens. The truth is, people are listening. The truth is, there's just a lot of feedback and everyone doesn't always see it the same way. So our job individually is to belly up to the table, to provide the feedback that we're asked for, and then when a decision's made, to embrace that decision, even if that decision didn't go the way that we had hoped that it would go. And that's going to take a piece of maturity. It might feel like nobody is listening. Truth is, we are. It just didn't go the way that we thought we wanted it to go at that time. Me included. This happens all the time. Not all of us are always going to get our way in those situations. So, as we wrap this up, there were a couple ratings, a couple questions, I would say for me, that are a bit concerning because most of our staff was in one direction and some of the ratings were completely in the other direction. I just want you to hear me say, if you're struggling in your role at the church, we want more for you. We want you to be living out your purpose. This isn't just a cliche statement that we say on the weekend that we want for our church. We also want that for our staff. So if you're struggling, if you don't feel like your role is the right fit, have a conversation with your supervisor. How can we make adjustments? Maybe there's a role shift. Maybe you took on new responsibilities and you're not actually thriving in that current role. But let's work on that together. And the truth is, maybe we can't get to a spot where this role or a role at Cedar Creek is going to fit you and your purpose. And that's okay. God has us in different seasons, at different times, for different reasons. And maybe you've been on church staff here at Cedar Creek and it's been great, but maybe it's no longer for you for the future. But we want more for you. We want you to live out your purpose. We want you to be fulfilled in your life. So if you're frustrated here, please don't stick around and just continue to boil or stew or not have a great experience under the surface. It's like, let's talk about it. Let's lean in. We appreciate each one of you. Now, if you've made it this far, here's what I want you to do. I want you to email me or Teams me or text me. You could even send up a smoke signal and say, Josh, I watched the staff video update. And then at our next all staff meeting in a couple weeks, I have a special surprise for you. Thanks, team. See you soon. Bye.